Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into something totally fascinating today. It's a highly radical text by a writer named Zhu Feng, and let me tell you, it completely redefines spiritual enlightenment. It challenges pretty much everything we think we know about being spiritual. Because, if you're used to thinking of enlightened figures as perfectly serene beings like monks floating on clouds, completely undisturbed by the world, never showing even a hint of anger, well, this text is going to flip that entirely on its head. So get ready to rethink your fundamental definition of inner peace.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's Explainer, so we can systematically unpack this paradigm-shifting philosophy without getting lost in the weeds. We'll start with the mystery of the Tao Achiever, then move into the law of perfect feedback. Next, we'll examine the mirror of reality, see exactly why the author rejects traditional spiritual wisdom, distinguish pure instinct from destructive excuses, and finally, look at the concept of returning to the child.
All right, let's jump right into the first section, the mystery of the Tao Achiever, and how it shatters that classic Stoic stereotype.
So, the author grabs our attention right out of the gate by asking a really startling question. Why does Jesus Christ weep, get angry, and cry out in pain? And this is meant to deliberately shatter our deeply ingrained stereotype of the stoic, emotionless, holy figure. We so often equate divinity and enlightenment with, like, a total flat line of emotion, right? But the source points out that a true master, or what the text calls a Tao Achiever, openly and visibly displays their emotions. They don't suppress their humanity just to appear peacefully detached. Their raw emotional output is actually presented as proof of their spiritual alignment.
A Tao Achiever isn't just a calm sage meditating on a mountain. They're actually defined as a spiritual, impartial, universal precision scientific reaction instrument. I know, that sounds incredibly mechanical for spirituality, but think of it like a perfectly calibrated thermostat. A thermostat doesn't sit there judging the room for being too cold, and it doesn't try to stubbornly suppress the heat. It simply registers the environment and reacts with absolute precision to govern the temperature. The text states that this highly sensitive, perfectly calibrated instrument essentially governs the orderly operation of all life and things across space and time.
That flows perfectly into our second section, the law of perfect feedback, looking at the inputs and outputs of the Tao.
The author uses these really great modern analogies to explain how this instrument operates as a flawless system of cause and effect. Think of it like a search engine. If you type in the word human, the output must naturally be human, and that means you're perfectly following the Tao. But if you search for a maple leaf and the system spits out a stone, well, that system is completely broken. It is going against the Tao. And the exact same logic applies to a car. If you hit the brake but the car suddenly accelerates, it lacks Tao nature. In this philosophy, a specific input absolutely must yield a precise, corresponding output, no exceptions.
The source rapid fires through these everyday examples to really drive this point home. A struck bell must make a sound. A turned-on TV must display an image and sound. A seed planted in moist soil must sprout. Now translate all of this to human behavior. The crucial takeaway here is this. Failing to respond promptly and accurately to environmental stimuli means you lack Tao nature. Imagine a friend runs up to you, huge smile, great news, and you just stare back blankly, like a broken TV. You are failing to yield the correct output. In this framework, suppressing that natural response actually makes you an adversary of the Tao.
Which brings us right to Section 3, the mirror of reality, reflecting the truth without distortion. The text argues that a Tao Achiever is like a mirror, reflecting the object truthfully. Honestly, this is probably the most provocative metaphor in the entire text. A true Tao Achiever is essentially empty and immovable. They don't have personal biases, hidden agendas, or preconceived opinions. Just think about how we usually operate day to day. We hold on to past grudges, or we drag a bad mood from a work meeting into a completely new interaction. A mirror doesn't do that, does it? It exists purely to perfectly reflect the ever-changing external scenery. If the scenery is crying, the mirror reflects tears. If it's joyful, it perfectly reflects joy.
So, let's imagine two scenarios. If someone approaches you with love, you respond with love. Easy enough. That makes sense to most of us. But look at the flip side. If they deceive, you must respond with deceit. A true Tao Achiever has to match whatever the object brings. This means no taking the moral high ground and absolutely no being the bigger person. If someone brings trickery into your interaction, the text insists you must truthfully reflect that exact trickery back. It's a massive departure from the modern idea of killing them with kindness. You don't try to outsmart them, you simply reflect their own reality right back at them.
And that directly sets up Section 4, rejecting traditional spiritual wisdom, and why conventional morality actually goes against the Tao.
Now, if you've ever been taught to turn the other cheek, this text strongly disagrees with you. The source outlines all that traditional advice for handling insults or slander, things like tolerating it, yielding to it, avoiding it, enduring it, or even respecting the abuser. These are deeply ingrained self-help concepts we literally hear all the time. Yet, the author entirely rejects all of these responses as being fundamentally contrary to the Tao.
The author actually argues against passive acceptance, using some seriously intense language. They label this kind of tolerance as a cunning application of one's own intellect, and literally call it the detritus of Chinese culture. Why such harsh words? Well, the argument is that showing respect to a deceiver actually distorts reality. Think of it like the psychology of an enabler. By tolerating bad behavior, you indulge their bad traits, making them think their deceit is perfectly acceptable. Ultimately, that harms everyone. The fault, the author argues, actually lies with the person who failed to accurately reflect the deceit in the first place. The text goes on to take direct aim at other established traditions, comparing true intrinsic nature with the Buddhist concepts of precepts, concentration, and wisdom. The author explicitly claims that Buddhist precepts are unnatural attachments. Attempting to prohibit natural feelings represses a person's vibrant, true life. It's the stark contrast between a wildly growing, vibrant tree and a chained, dead one. In this framework, suppressing a natural emotional reaction, yes, even anger, is viewed as slowly suffocating your own life force. It turns you into what the author literally describes as a lifeless corpse. It is a complete and total rejection of any philosophy that asks you to repress your immediate, natural reaction to the world.
Which brings us to a very important distinction in Section 5, instinct versus destructive excuse, the boundary of the Tao Achiever.
Okay, hearing all this talk of pure, unfiltered reaction, you might be thinking, wait, this sounds like a recipe for absolute chaos. So we absolutely need to address a crucial caveat the author introduces here. The text makes it explicitly clear that intrinsic nature is never an excuse for oppression or initiating unprovoked disturbances. If you lash out at a coworker just because you're having a bad day and you call it instinct, the author says that is absolutely not the Tao. That is a damaged, distorted life structure creating unprovoked harm just to impose your will on others.
The author states, "The mind reveals itself in response to events." This quote is paramount to understanding the whole concept. It means a Tao Achiever strictly reacts to stimuli that are presented to them. They do not go looking for trouble, and they never create disturbances out of thin air. Their entire existence is responsive, not aggressively proactive. Think of it a bit like the martial art of Aikido, where a practitioner only uses the energy an opponent brings to them, and they never throw the first punch. To make this crystal clear, the source contrasts the flawless reaction to stimuli of a Tao Achiever against the unprovoked disturbances of a distorted life. Using a great analogy from the animal kingdom, the text points out that a ram, no matter how excited, will never assault a sheep that isn't in heat. It reacts flawlessly to natural signals. A distorted life, on the other hand, acts like a tornado, spinning up out of nowhere, causing unprovoked destruction and falsely claiming it's just following its nature. A true Tao Achiever flawlessly reacts to their environment, but never initiates the chaos.
Finally, we reach our resolution in Section 6, Returning to the Child, the ultimate state of the Tao.
The text concludes that there are essentially two types of Tao Achievers. The first is an untainted, innocent child displaying all their emotions clearly. The second is a person with profound wisdom, who paradoxically appears to have no wisdom at all. To truly learn the Tao, the author says we shouldn't look to so-called wise gurus. Instead, we must look to nature, to mirrors, and to innocent children. If you've ever spent time with a toddler, you know exactly what this means. They have zero filter. They will tell you exactly how they feel, instantly, without worrying about being polite, maintaining vanity, or taking some moral high ground. They just react.
We're wrapping up today's explainer on this final, synthesizing question straight from the text. Can you forget yourself to faithfully reflect the truth? It completely challenges us to consider if we can truly let go of our egos, our biases, and all those learned societal behaviors to become a perfect, impartial mirror of reality. It's just an incredibly unique lens through which to view human interaction. So the next time someone brings you anger, or joy, or deceit, ask yourself, are you reacting to protect your ego, or are you just perfectly reflecting the truth? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive today. I'll see you next time.